Welcome back to Retro Rebound. Today we wind back the clock 19 full years to an RPG that, pardon the pun, changed the game. It's from the studio that went on to create the likes of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, Fallout 3, and Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, as well as Fallout 4. All games that share one definition: generation-defining titles. But that legacy began with one single game, and that was Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Specifically, we're taking a look at the Game of the Year edition for this video. I make it no secret, I love me a Bethesda Game Studios game, but Morrowind I've gotten a bit up and down with. So as always with these retrospectives, we're going to go over the original packaging that the game came with, we're going to share some stories, and then of course, we'll talk about the game. So if you're new here and you're looking for more retro themed content, consider subscribing. We have much more on the way. We upload twice every single week. And now, let's talk about Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Mind you, if you're playing vanilla Morrowind in 2021, you're doing it wrong. Game of the Year edition comes with Blood Moon, comes with Tribunal. So do not waste your time with the vanilla version of the game. There's no novelty there. Just get this one if you're looking for anything to add to your physical collection. So on the inside, what I found really surprising when I cracked this open was one disc. This was during an era where we'd get the multi-discs. I think of something kind of like MechAssault 2, where when they had limited edition content, they made a separate disc for it. To have Morrowind, a game as big as it, which was insane for its time, plus all of its DLC, it's pretty crazy they squeezed it onto one disc in 2003, let alone the base game on a disc in 2002. So that was the first thing that popped out to me. I also like that they had an in-game screenshot here on the disc. Usually it's art of some kind, but they just used the opening town, Satanin, it looks like, for that screenshot on the disc, which I thought was kind of funny. A couple cool things came with it, though, that we'll get into. Like, right here, they have the Morrowind Prophecies, which is a strategy guide with 400 pages. They made full-on novels that guided you through these games. And I can honestly argue that I think of any game ever needed a strategy guide, it was definitely Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. This game, it was so tough to find objectives. We'll talk about that in a moment. I also found these interesting. This is how marketing teams got their information for games back then, because the internet wasn't as prevalent, so you couldn't just source like social media data. So they would send you postcards with your games and you could fill them out. They'd say what factors influenced your purchase, and you'd learn your advertisement worked, your friend recommended it to you, a store display worked, and they know what parts to gear up and what parts to wind down. It was slow, glacial even, but it worked until things evolved. And you can even see Bethesda Softworks logo on the back. You send it back to them and they use that data for their marketing for you. Of course, the instruction manual must not be ignored here. Another thick one. I've actually never, this is my first time paging through the Morrowind instruction manual. I can see they use the S controller here, which is pretty cool. You can see the sky in the background of some of those shots, and they even use, again, gameplay screenshots for the background of some of their pages here. They go through every race. They break down the lore of them, which is really cool to see. They definitely make these models look a little bit sharper than they actually look in game. Like, you can see the actual polygons on the models inside Morrowind. So it's funny how much they clean them up here for this manual, which this is a deep RPG. You can just tell by looking at the combat arts, the birth signs, even when you're customizing your character in the beginning of the game, the specialized classes, how leveling up works, the dice rolls that occur. They're going over schools of magic here. Such a deep, deep game, especially again for its time on the console space. Unreal. But what is an Elder Scrolls release without one little collectible that makes it all worth it? This cost me 50 bucks, but I'll always hold it in here and never hang it up on my wall until I can frame it. What you are taking a look at here is the map of Vardenfell. So this is where Morrowind was set. And they gave you a full map, and you could see the Ashlands. They broke down the West Gash, Bitter Coast. You could see all the little towns that you could explore. And this would help guide you through your experience, but they've been doing this forever. In fact, the complete in-box copy of Skyrim comes with a map, as does Oblivion. So it's cool that Bethesda's always done these, and it makes me excited for Elder Scrolls 6. But I always thought this was a nice little collectible that made it worth having on the shelves, even if you're going to go to PC and play it that way. So those are the highlights of what you get when you pull the game off of store shelves back then in 2003 or 2002. And now it's time for stories. So, first time I saw Morrowind, I was at a buddy's house, right? And I remember watching them play and go, is this even real? You know, the game was that big in that open world where I had never seen anything like it, right? So I'm thinking, wow, I want to get my hands on this game. So he lends me the controller, I try it out, and a pretty common thing in my history of Bethesda Game Studios games was firing them up and not liking them on the first rip. I had it happen with Fallout 3. This isn't a Bethesda Game Studios game, but it's certainly like one. I had it happen with Fallout New Vegas. Maybe it's something with Fallout, I don't know. But Fallout 4 worked the first time. But I fire this one up and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Why didn't it make sense? Because the game dice rolls every attack you do. So it's doing these numbers invisibly behind closed doors. And so as I'm swinging my weapon, I'm just whiffing, right? I'm just like, whoo, 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 just catching nothing but air. But it doesn't make sense because pretend the mic is an enemy. I'm chopping them right in their skull. So why am I not connecting? This didn't make sense to me. And it was such a problem as a kid who loved RPGs because it didn't connect with my brain. Like I had KOTOR as my favorite game ever. And that also was a game where I would be in someone's face and take a swing and miss and go, well, what happened there? I don't really get that. So Morrowind was even crazier because this was an action game. You pulled the trigger, you took a swing. And so when I first played Morrowind, I went, no, I'm good. Put it down, moved back to KOTOR. My life was great for a while. Then my main channel, Mr. Matty Plays, picked up, and a lot of people insisted, like, hey, you like Skyrim, you like New Vegas, you like Fallout 3, you like all these games, it's time to go back. You like Oblivion, go back and play Morrowind. And so I go back, and it's still a little bit tough to get into nowadays, if I'm honest with you all. It definitely has a charm to it, like I think any special game from this era has. But there's no denying that the game doesn't play well. However, once you overcome a particular curve, that is when the game really takes off. So in the early going, it makes sense why you're going to miss all these attacks because your skills are super low. And as you use these skills, a la Elder Scrolls, as per usual, you are going to increase them. And as you increase them, suddenly you're going to start connecting with another attack or two. And then the game becomes more responsive. But it's because of those deep RPG roots that it makes you whiff in the early going. And that can be frustrating and push a lot of people away. But as you get to the mid game and end game, it feels really good, that power curve. It's something that Bethesda Game Studios has really lost over the years. When you take a look at their games now, like Skyrim and Fallout 4, where you're pretty much God himself by a quarter of the way through the game. So I like that Morrowind actually presented some real difficulty in role-playing. And speaking of role-playing, we got to talk about what has really become such a legendary intro, in my opinion. Bethesda Game Studios is known for that step-out moment. You exit the vault of Fallout 3, you see the wasteland presented before you and go, oh my gosh, where do I go? Morrowind is one of their most open games ever, even to this day. There's such a sense of freedom there. But you step off a boat onto a dock. And on that dock, you talk to a guard. And you get questioned. And you start to fill out things like your race. You start to fill out questionnaires about your class, what signs you worship. All of this stuff. You can even customize your own classes, which was sick. There was so much in that first 5 minutes that defines you and sets you on a new way to play the game than really any other game Bethesda Game Studios has made before. But what's amazing is you go through the census offices, you fill out all of this paperwork, and like a Bethesda Game Studios game, if you're playing all these modern ones, you go back, you think, like, what's that step-out moment going to be like? And you walk out a door and it's a normal town. There's no vista. There's no beautiful presentation. It's just a normal town. And I remember just thinking to myself, wow, going back to this is incredible, like where it started and what it is now. So now let's talk about questing. That's the other thing that I really wanted to hit on with this video when we were reflecting on it. So Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind isn't like your typical open world game, you know, the waypoints on the map. Everything about this game is told to you through your journal and through lots of lines of dialogue. Again, not really your traditional Bethesda Game Studios experience nowadays. But what'll happen is you'll talk to someone, they'll say, go north on Seda Road and then take a left on Arbitrary Avenue and then go north another couple of clicks and then you'll find a river to your left. When you find that river, make a sharp right or make a slight right turn. It's like a GPS, but it's only text. And so what happens is as you're walking around the open world, you're looking for signs. You're checking your journal going, did I pass that river? Is this the same river I thought it was? There's no waypoints, no guidance, no hand holding. It's very hardcore, even in that sense. And what that means, you might think to yourself, oh, you get lost. I look up a walkthrough and sure that works. But it leads to two things. One is immersion. You truly buy into this world, right? You're really biting down on what it's offering. You're thinking to yourself like, okay, I'm game. I'm going to pay attention to all the details around me. And what's great is the game gives you the tools. Again, those street signs may not seem like the biggest deal, but that was your guiding key through the whole world. And they still use it to this day on, say, Skyrim. So I thought it was awesome to see those building blocks be established even then, even if Skyrim gives you waypoints, that they're still using those signs to guide you through the open world. The other not so good thing is because Morrowind's a very tough game, and if your skills aren't that great, then you might die pretty quickly when you wander into the wrong area. So this isn't, again, we got to go back to Skyrim where you could hop in, go all the way to the other side of the map, go to Markarth and say, I'm kicking down this dungeon here. What bandits you got for me? Let's do this. Come on, fight me right now. You just can't do that in Morrowind. You show up in a dungeon that you're not ready for, and they're going to smoke you. And since it's an old game, they're going to smoke you and make you reload like 20, 30 minutes, however long it was, of progress. And of course, that brings the conversation of modding in. What's a Bethesda Game Studios game without modding? And fortunately, a lot of the issues that I had growing up and that many people have had with this game can be alleviated by this. And I think it would be ignorant to not bring it up. While it's a retrospective on the original copy of the game, I think we still need to talk about modding, which modernizes how the game looks. It changes the combat so that you can actually check a box that lets you guarantee to hit on attack. It also brings up mods that are remaking Morrowind, such as Skywind, which is still in development. Of course, with Anniversary Edition, that threw a kind of monkey wrench into the development of a lot of big mods. But Morrowind is a absolutely legendary RPG, so much so that people are remaking it for free and have made full-on mod packages that overhaul the game on a visual and gameplay level, where it really begs the question, would they ever remaster the game, right? We're talking 19 years later, and next year's the 20th anniversary. Bethesda's been pretty hard on the idea of absolutely no remasters whatsoever, right? And much to my chagrin, with being a Fallout fan and wanting Fallout 3 and New Vegas to come back in a world with only Fallout 76, that would just be great to see. But Morrowind is a game that I think is a candidate for touching up. You have a world here that doesn't hold your hand, doesn't really guide you, and that's a strength. And there's such fantastic quests built in here. I love the guilds in Elder Scrolls. I love the factions that really are the storytelling pillars here in every Elder Scrolls game. There are side quests you can pick up and do whatever, but it's those faction storylines that I think are really where the best storytelling for Elder Scrolls stands out. I think of something like the Dark Brotherhood and Oblivion. So I think the core content should never be touched, and even the way they guide you through the world shouldn't be touched. But if they could do something about the combat, that might be a good talking point. At the end of the day, though, while I think for a lot of people it would be great, I don't know if it would be necessarily a product for me, because it's really a time capsule type of game. Like, they will never make a game like Morrowind again. They really won't. And with it being available in backwards compatibility, you can fire this up, 60 FPS, 4K resolution. Sure, auto HDR, it looks great on consoles. So a lot of that work has already been done on a tech front if you throw this into a Series X, where I found myself thinking, you know what, if you change the gameplay, all the role-playing systems change. And you don't want to jeopardize what is the game that saved your company. So kind of leave it as is, in my eyes. It's not like a Fallout 3, which was a series that you purchased, and the shooting in that game isn't very good, and a lot of the role-playing mechanics don't play a factor in how the shooting performs. So if you change that core gameplay mechanic, it doesn't disrupt everything around it. The perks still matter. The skills that you level up mostly count for out-of-combat stuff, like medical for healing or speech checks. None of that is affected by fixing the shooting. But if you go into Morrowind and you start to adjust, here, every swing does damage. Now we're talking about a game that has a lot of its core role-playing roots stripped. How fun is the class builder if what you're building the class for to eventually reach is completely removed? And effectively, the power curve is destroyed. So I get why a lot of people want it remastered, and certainly I wouldn't argue it, but I don't know how excited I'd be knowing what would probably come at the cost of it. Now, if we're talking, hey, widescreen, HD, trophies added. PlayStation fans get to experience Morrowind, and we didn't change anything else. It's just classic Morrowind. You know what? Sure. But if you're going to change that core vision, I'd rather not. But we're talking about one of the biggest RPGs ever. Hundreds of hours. I mean, you think Skyrim's a big game. Try this on for size. But it can be tough to get into, I'll be honest with you all. Really even hopping back into it for this video, hopping back into it for my content on my other channel, it is definitely tough to get into. It's not for everybody. That's where I think Oblivion really clicked with a lot of people. Oblivion was just such a fantastic culmination of everything that Skyrim would become, not fully developed, and everything that Morrowind previously was, right? And so, such a fantastic series, a wonderful game that I'm so happy to go back to for this video. And of course, we'll be talking more of Elder Scrolls and Fallout and all other retro games here on this channel. So, what do you think of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind? Let me know. But other than that, take great care of yourselves, and we'll talk soon. Peace out.